All right, should we go ahead and get started? Sarad, do you mind advancing to the next slide? We want to thank everybody for joining us today for another DEI Lunch and Learn, where today we're going to go over the Quick Start Guide and the Resource Guide and where to find them, where to use them, in just the continuation of this series. And at the end, by the way, of today, we're going to announce our next upcoming topic, which will be the first one where it's about putting DEI into practice. But today our webinar hosts are the beautiful Elizabeth Mejia, who is Senior Director of Organizational Health for CIS National. She's waving. And of course, the handsome Sarad Davenport, Principal of Organizational Health for also CIS National. And thrilled to have both of these two leaders who, they'll give a little more background themselves, but they've been on this journey since the design team, the planning team. They're now in the implementation stage of bringing this work of DEI into CIS. And so let's welcome them and thank you for being our host today.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited. This is Elizabeth. And as Corinne said, I've been definitely very highly committed to the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion when I wore my CEO hat in Miami as a network member and now part of the national team. And just am really excited about the energy that we have here at National and all across the network. So looking forward to today's discussion.
Like Elizabeth, I'm excited to be here today and excited to go a little deeper about the application work that has been done by the design team, the planning team, the implementation team that's now started working on DEI work, not only in the national office, but throughout the network. So happy to be here. Again, very excited to be working on this work.
Okay. So what we are going to try to accomplish today is to make sure that we have a good understanding on how to use the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Quick Start Guide and the Resource Guide. We want to look at the tools and the resource and how to navigate through it and the continuum, and just to hear how others in the network are tapping onto these resources and using it to advance their journey. And so as a reminder, these resources are found in the National Resource Center. And you could go there, you could download the organizational assessment, you could download the Quick Start and the Resource Guide, right? So everything is there at your fingertips. And so we're gonna turn it over to Sarad to walk us through the Quick Start Guide.
All right, so first, we'll talk a little bit about what you will find in the guide. And if you have your guide on your computer, your other tab, because you already logged into NRC, use the word empower for the password. I know you already did. So you'll find the guide, and a couple of things that are there within the Quick Start Guide. Well, three. There's a decision tree. There's also information on why DEI and why we're embarking on this journey now, and then also some very clear definitions about diversity, equity. You look at the slide; it's very small, but if you can zoom in a little, you'll see that there's a kind of image that gives the definition to inclusion, so to speak. So you'll see those types of ways of defining the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion within the resource guide. So you'll see all of that there. Next, what you'll see in the Quick Start Guide is a decision tree. So, and decision tree will guide you through a 4-step process of getting started. And the Quick Start Guide is just to help you really get started in DEI work, and we'll go further into the resource guide later about how you can kind of go deeper into the work. But the Quick Start Guide is a reference for folks to, get started quick and begin to delve into the work. So you'll see the different steps. So first, to read the Quick Start Guide, look at the stakeholder commitment continuum assessment. And then there's the stakeholder continuum, and then delve into the resource guide. So you'll see the decision tree, and we'll go a little further into that later. So once you go through the decision tree, I'll slide back, and you kind of plot yourself on the continuum. You'll kind of choose your starting point, and your starting point meaning whether you are affiliate leadership or if you are student support staff. So affiliate leadership would be positions like board members, positions like CEO or executive director. Student support staff would be program managers. It would also be site coordinators and things of that nature. And you'll be able to find yourself, your starting point within the continuum, within the Quick Start Guide by using this page. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Elizabeth to talk a little bit more about the continuum.
Okay, so as Sarat said, the way the resource guide and the continuum is organized is by categories. We are all in different places, and obviously everyone in an affiliate is not in the same place in their diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. And that's to be expected, and that's how we learn and support each other. So to make the tool easier to navigate, we collapse categories, so executive leaderships, students, so that you could hone in the area that is most related to your role. Because there is, let me tell you right now, there is a wonderful, lots of resources in that resource guide, and we don't want you to get lost in all the resources and be overwhelmed by it. And that's why we have the category to make that easier for you. The continuum then breaks it by categories, and then it has how we can move along in our understanding and our work and our journey. And so, Sarat, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, so it'll be a close-up. So once you have your category, whether let's say I am the HR manager, or I'm the one, I might be a program manager, but I do all the hiring. So I would look into that category where there's the HR. And then what it does is allows you to see where you might be as that category. The different phases there, as you could see, is, could you go back to the other slide that shows the continuum? Thank you. So one thing that I want to stress is that nothing is linear. You know, it's not like you go step 1, step 2, step 3. Life is not that simple. It is a back and forth. It is a back and forth. There's always things that we're learning. There's always things that's being added in our community. And so I just really want to stress that. So there are times that you may be at awareness around a particular population or a particular topic in your community. At other times you may be in ownership and promotion. So there is fluidity in this continuum. And the idea is to at least have a sense of where you might be or your affiliate might be, so that you could then intentionally move along and gaining more knowledge. And so, for instance, with awareness, that is usually that, you know, we know that this is out there. We know diversity, equity, and inclusion exists and that it is important. And, you know, so there's like a general awareness of it, but what does that mean? We may not know deeper, and that's okay. We're curious, but we quite don't know how to apply that to our work. While understanding is that we do understand that not only our diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that's important for our work, but we understand how it impacts our work, and that yes, it's something that we should be doing about this. But what? Maybe I'm not quite sure yet, but I do know this is important, and that will be understanding. In an adoption, you're like, okay, we need to do this. We need to do the work, and I'm ready to take this more into practice. And then ownership and promotion is like, you know, like in everything that you're doing now, it is the way you operate to put on the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so you are owning it, you have a role in it and you're promoting it. And lastly, innovation is like, okay, so what else could I do? What are some things that I could be creative with this work? And like I said, no, you're not going to be in one end of the continuum at all time. You're going to be moving back and forth depending on the issues, the population, your community needs that there is there for you. So that's what the continuum is meant to do, is to help you as an affiliate and as team members to have a sense of where you might be. And then what happens is that once you look at your category, you'll see in this next page, for instance, if you are a board member, and you are adoption, what that might look like. So it gives you a little example about what would an adoption look like, what might awareness look like, for them to think about where they are. All right, so it gives you more detail. Well, what does that mean, and what might that look like specific to my role? All right, and surround, and then if you move one over, then this is when now we have created an assessment. I have to stress, this is not a research-based assessment. It's something that we as a team have put together as to some what could help us figure out where we are. And really stressing that this is a discussion. This is a opportunity to put the topic on the table and to think through and to make decisions. So it's not like you're going to take this assessment, you're going to get a score, and it's going to tell you scientifically that you are in awareness. It's not that. It is for you guys to put a team together. You could decide how to put a team together, who should be in that team, and then talk through, well, as a team, where do we think we are with our board around this? And kind of plot yourself. When we do our hiring, where are we there? And it is a discussion where we listen to each other and we create this environment that we could be honest and inquisitive and vulnerable and look at, that's okay. Maybe here we are in awareness, and create that safe environment where you can use the assessment to then plot yourself. All right, but what I would stress, like I said, that the discussion is very important, and the fluidity of it. And then, Sarat, if you go to the next slide, you will see here, it is an assessment that is going to, once you pick your category, so you're going to start as a executive, maybe you're the executive director, and then you start at awareness. And maybe you take the questions and you're like, oh no, I'm past awareness, you jump to the next one, to understanding. You may be there and then you realize, wait a minute, I need to spend more time here. And so you stop. You don't need to go all the way through innovation to see where you are. So you may have decided, okay, I feel that as an executive director, I am at that understanding place. And then what that does is that once you identify where you are, then it links you to the resources that are specific to help broaden adoption or understanding, and giving you resources very specific for that level of engagement, all right? So as you can see, is very multifaceted, is meant to be a conversation trigger, and it requires a lot of reflection. And Sarat is gonna go and walk you through as to, once you know where you are, the resources that are available. But one thing I will point out, Sarat, if you go to the next slide, so right now is a pen and pencil version. So you would print that, you will put your team together. Some people might even elect to bring an outside facilitator. How you choose to do this in your community is completely up to you. You could do it, all staff, you could do it, just representatives, a committee that you put together to do the work. There's not a right and a wrong. We are working on an electronic version because it might be easier to send it to people so that they could try to plot themselves. But I do want to say that the discussion piece and the dialogue piece is the most critical piece, not the quantitative number that might come out and say where you are, all right? because you know yourself, and these discussions will allow you to see what makes the most sense for you. So for instance, we were working with one of our department, and it looked like that maybe we were in awareness, but then when we just plotted it, when we just did the assessment and we just answered the questions, but then when we got together as a group and dug a little deeper, we realized, no, we are more at adoption. And so it just required that dialogue to understand the nuances and where we felt we wanted to, it made sense for us to land. All right, so keep your eyes open in Yammer when we send out the alert that the electronic version is available. But in the meantime, the pen and paper pencils is there available for you right now. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Sarad, who will walk you through the next steps of once you know where you are and what are the resources available.
To build on what Elizabeth was talking about, the assessment will be used as a tool to support the electronic assessment will be used as a tool to support the overall assessment. So it really is about having a dialogue. We've had some folks in the office, Jason and Ernestine, who are helping with, building the electronic tool to be used as a support to the overall assessment, so that folks can have a deeper dialogue about where they find themselves on the continuum. So next, when you find yourself on the continuum, step 3 is to kind of plot yourself on the continuum. And then when you plot yourself on the continuum based on those conversations that you've had as a group, individually, in groups, collectively, when you did some self-reflection and there's been group reflection, then the next step is to go to the resource guide, because the resource guide will actually break down into certain areas on the continuum that will direct you to resources that you should use to continue on your journey. So the resource guide has 5 total chapters, and those chapters, as you'll see on the screen, are in the same categories as the continuum: awareness, understanding, adoption, ownership, and innovation. And in each chapter, there are sections for all staff and stakeholders. There's a section for organizational leaders, creating equity-minded organizations, and also for student support staff. So cultivating equity with students and families in the community. So just to use an example of how the resource guide can be used, you'll notice that it's color-coded. So within the actual resource guide, they are color-coded and mapped to the continuum. So if you find that your organization, your group, your department, find yourselves, you come to consensus that you're at understanding, so to speak. If you're at understanding, then you would follow the resource guide in the green section, which is understanding. I'll keep going. So you would find understanding in the resource guide, and you will find the stakeholder group that you needed to focus on, and then you would look at the examples of what you could possibly do. So you would start by reading the section for all staff and stakeholders, and then you would choose to read the section for affiliate leadership or student and support staff. So each chapter within the resource guide begins with goals, and you'll see the goals of each for all staff and stakeholders. And it talks about, like, the goal of this chapter is to help you develop awareness of the links between diversity, equity, and inclusion and our mission. So you'll see that there are different goals within each part of the continuum in each chapter of the resource guide. Now to the good part, the better part. Once you get, through the goals, you'll be able to get links to resources. So when you look at the resource guide, and it's meant to be electronic, there are some print versions out. I have a print version, but it's really meant to be used downloaded from the NRC, because they're embedded links. And you'll be able to click on these links that are bold and to go to these resources. And you'll see in this particular example, there's a link that goes to the Equity Literacy Institute. and that is under the continuum category of understanding. So if you find yourself in that category, you'll be able to pick topics and link to them directly that will give you resources on how you can activate diversity, equity, and inclusion work wherever you are, your department, your whole organization, your whole affiliate organization, or with your team, or even individually to go and find more information for yourself. One of the great things that we also have as a part of the resource guide is we have some stories from the network. And you know, one of the great things about this journey so far is that we've been very intentional, I think, in making sure that there was a co-design process and that this information was co-created alongside folks in the network. And you'll see that, you know, throughout the resources that we have. And this is just one highlight that you'll see in it, where you see inspirational stories from throughout the network of folks who are doing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Who you'll find here is our good friend, Artrella from CIS of Kalamazoo. She serves on the implementation team and also the core team. So these are some inspirational stories from her, and there are others for each category within the resource guide. All right. So,
and I just want to add one thing, if I may, that there really is a lot of resource there because, you know, there's a lot of wonderful organizations doing great work. And so we do realize that this is definitely a 1.0 version of the resource guide, and that it will be something that will continue to grow and evolve. But we hope that the resource guide will do some of the research for you so that it could save you some time as you thinking what your needs are. And already one of the questions that I know I've been asked is like, you know, let's say you are looking at adoption. Feel free to wander through the whole resource guide. Some big, you know, like people are already asking, oh, could I see what's under innovation? Could I see what's under adoption? Yes, there are a lot of resources there. Curiosity is a great thing. And I do encourage you to link through and get familiar with it, because sometimes you may not be sure what you might need and what might be helpful. And I think it just takes time to just kind of just be comfortable and click along. So I just wanted to share that and encourage you to do that as well. All right, so now we'll open it up to any questions that you might have, either through the comment section or like Corinne said, if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, also feel free to share if you've gotten started, how it's working.
Yes, good point.
To build on your comment, Elizabeth, you said before that it's dynamic. So, you know, the resource guide is something that will assist you, you know, in a dynamic way. So it won't be static. Like you'll be great, or I wouldn't say great, but you'll be strong in certain areas. And then there are other areas where you may need to grow. So you may need to look through the resource guide to kind of get a better calibration of where you are, because some areas within you'll be in adoption, in some areas you might be in understanding, and you'll need to kind of see kind of where you actually fit. And, you know, some of those tools may be necessary at different points, and it won't be linear, it won't be static, it'll be dynamic.
And if I could make one little plug as well, and then definitely I'll make sure if there's any questions that Corinne has from the chat. But the other day an affiliate had called and they were looking for icebreakers, they were looking for activities, and they had called me. And we went back to the resource guide and we found, you know, and there are great things that you could do with staff, activities, icebreaker discussions, things that you could do with students and with community members. And so that's just an example that just happened like within the last 2 weeks, that one of the affiliate had called me asking, hey, where could I get some ideas of what could I do during one of my staff meetings? So that's an example how the resource guide could be very helpful.
Any questions or thoughts from our folks in the room, in the live audience?
we did have somebody who asked, they said that they keep getting forwarded the information on our lunch and learns and they'd like to get on a mailing list. So we promote this mostly on Yammer. So if you have the ability to join Yammer, we also, not only in the main group, but there's also a DEI community of practice, and all the postings are there. You can also just shoot us your your email address, and we'll make sure that you get tagged in future direct mailings. That's great too. Let's see. Somebody says, "Can I find an affiliate DEI policy within the resources?"
So right now, the resource guide gather information externally, and one of the things that we're doing now is putting together network tools and identifying best practices. And so the resource guide does not right now have affiliate specific examples on policies, but you will find examples of policies from other nonprofits or HR and things like that. It's just not specific to CIS, but as Corinne said, that's the kind of thing that we want to encourage in Yammer. We definitely don't want people having to reinvent the wheel, and we do encourage people to explore what's out there and what people have customized specific for their affiliate.
Yeah, and as we move forward, we'll make an announcement about our next one, so you have a little bit of a heads up and can already put it on your calendar. Our next Lunch and Learn will be on Tuesday, February 18th. It'll be at the same time from 1 to 2 Eastern. And now that we've kind of shown you where you can find the resources and the NRC and a little bit about how to, get started, plotting yourself on the continuum, doing the assessment, and now starting to use the Quick Start Guide and the resource guide, we're going to do our next topic on actually putting this into practice and specifically looking at any biases that just kind of naturally show up in the hiring and interviewing process. And Don Gader, who's the head of HR for CIS National, is going to lead us in that one and just share some of the, the things that come up and, how to kind of mitigate some of those, biases so that we can really create an equitable and inclusive team in all of our organizations. So that should be a great one. So put that on your calendar for February 18th. And again, like moving forward each month, like sometimes we might do a panel if we hear, things like, hey, people are interested in what's happening out there with creating the DEI policies and things like that. We might be able to get a panel of people from throughout the network. So any ideas that you have, you're always welcome to reach out to the national office. You'll see right there, there's an email, diversity, equity, inclusion at cisnet.org, diversity, equity, inclusion at cisnet.org. So if you have any, requests for topics that you'd like to see on the Lunch and Learns, or if you'd like to get added to the mailing list, that would be a great place to start in emailing us at diversity, equity, inclusion, no and there, diversity, equity, inclusion at cisnet.org.
I would just add to that, Corinne, as well, that if you are doing something exciting in your community, if this is, you're actively engaged in the work, also email us and say, hey, I'm happy to be part of one of these webinars and share what I'm doing. As you can see, we're trying to really touch all the different ways that we learn. And so we're doing some things, through the resource guide that you do on your own, through these webinars, through Student Support Institute, through Town Hall, to really continue to walk this journey together. And we're not the experts. We are all doing this together. And so I also encourage you to share your story and your expertise with the rest of the network as well.
Yeah, we've got lots of opportunities to have you participate in a Lunch and Learn or do a, showcase the great work that you're doing out there in a blog post or a Yammer post. So absolutely, Elizabeth, that's great, reminding people to let us know what you're doing out there. Now let's see, we have a new person that just said they wanted to share that the resource guide is a learner's dream come true. Endless resources. They've started using the resources with their school-based team, and it's given them a starting place to begin their DEI journey together. Yeah, so somebody said, I sent out the resource a few weeks ahead of our staff meeting and we discussed our learnings for 30 minutes during our monthly time together. Wow, thank you. That's Nevin. Awesome. Nevin, anything you want to add live if you want to come off mute?
That's wonderful.
That's great. Nevin out there in North Carolina, South Carolina? One of the Carolinas, right?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Awesome.
Thank you, Nevin.
Thank you. All right, any last comments or questions for the hosts? No, it doesn't look like that. Sarad and Elizabeth, just want to say a big thank you to you for walking us through the resource guide and the quick start guide. Fantastic work. Give us a few days, and by early next week, this will also be posted on the NRC. And you'll find the one from last month there as well. So each month, if you happen to miss it, or you want to go back and you want to, look at, hey, where could I find that, or what did they say about this? You'll be able to access those on the NRC. So again, thank you, and we'll see you in February on the 18th, where we're going to take a look at DEI and the hiring process. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
On my calendar. Which one? The Lunch and Learn.